Okay, I'm going to go over the Mojobox. This is my newest addition so far, and what I like about it is it's kind of similar to a Sidewinder, but it's more of a shader color packer complement to the Sidewinder. It has the same coil-like hit, pretty effortless to put to the skin and saturate. You can also line with it. It seems to do really well with small liners at a low speed, and you can turn it up pretty high and get it to hit really hard. Sometimes it will do better lining than the Sidewinder will for certain areas of the skin, and other times the Sidewinder is going to work a little better. The Sidewinder seems to have a little bit more snap, but not as much mass behind the hit, where this one doesn't have quite as much snap, but has a lot more mass behind the hit. I've used everything from 7 mags to 19 mags, and it does pretty good with them. It doesn't chew up the skin, for me at least. So anyways, similar to the Sidewinder, you have an impact adjustment screw, which you can see, this is the set screw right there that controls the impact. And you have an upstroke adjustment knob. This doesn't control the stroke, so to speak, because the stroke is a set 3.5 millimeter cam. But there's an upstroke, so when you get over 6 volts, you get some more momentum going, and the armature bar will come up higher. I find that being able to stick a business card when it's in the up position, being able to stick a business card in between this flat spring here and that knob seems to be about the ideal spot, for me at least, where it's pretty stable. It doesn't get all crazy. It doesn't hit too hard, but it doesn't hit too soft either. Turning it up is going to make it hit a little softer, and turning it down is going to make it hit harder. But more than anything, it already kind of has a pretty good all-around nice hit to it. And so I usually use this knob and the impact screw to just stabilize the machine and smooth it out if it's acting weird. As far as the impact screw goes, you want to adjust it to where the cam, the armature bar will bottom out, and there's a slight rotation of the cam in the bottom of the stroke where it's not moving. It's basically cutting off that rounded part of the cam cycle. Here is a diagram of the cam in the front of the machine, and when the armature bar is pushed all the way down, the cam should rotate about 30 degrees maybe. That's about like from about the 5 o'clock position to the 7 o'clock position. It should rotate while the armature bar is bottomed out. Well, let's plug this in. The nipples also can make a difference. I've just been tuning all my machines using the Icon nipples. They seem to just have a nice firm rubber, and they're not too hard, not too soft. They don't get tore up. This machine isn't quite as sensitive as a Sidewinder is as far as what nipples you use. Okay. So I like to start at 5 volts when I'm tuning. I check, make sure I got the good rotation on the cam. I do. And as I start turning it up, just make sure it gets smooth and doesn't have any. That's 6.6. Up to 7. So now let's turn it down to 6 volts here. I can adjust this knob. I'm turning it up. You can hear I went up too far, and now it gets choppy again. Turn it down. It starts getting hard. Now if I have it too low, it might get kind of raspy as I turn it up. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I really like to tune these at about 6 volts just to make sure, or about maybe 6.5 volts, make sure it doesn't get too choppy. And that's pretty good. Now, if your impact screw is backed out too far, it gets that stuttery thing, kind of like the Sidewinder will. But at higher volts, it's not a big deal. And then you can back this knob out a little bit more, and so you can get a little bit more stroke and a little bit more pop that way. But at lower volts, it kind of gets that grainy sound. And you can see the armature bar is not parallel with the frame, and usually just about where it's parallel with the frame is the ideal setting for the impact screw. Sounds good. Turn it down. Another thing I like to do when I set that stroke adjustment knob is turn to about 6 volts. I have the knob all the way down, and as I start turning it up, I'm going to listen for the pitch to change. So I'm turning it right there, and that seems to be a good point. You know, at 6 volts, it's hitting about as hard as it's going to hit, and you can turn it up and it'll get harder. And at 5 volts, you should still hear that impact. There are locking screws to lock the adjustment screws in place. So right here on the side, using a 1.5 millimeter Allen key, I can lock that in place, lock this one in place. And depending on the nipple you use, you may have to adjust the machine. Even though I tune them and triple check them before I send them out, if you use a different nipple than what I used, it might be something where you need to make a slight adjustment. Overall, it's a pretty easy machine to adjust. I think that's about it. Make sure your clip cord, I recommend having the positive side down, but it doesn't matter as long as you consistently put the clip cord on the same way each time. That will save the life of the motor substantially. No lube necessary on this. Everything is grease lubricated, so oil will damage it. Try to keep your sterilants to a minimum. Don't get your sterilants on moving parts. It'll tear apart the machine. All right, thanks for watching.